Welcome to episode 3 of The Process with Judah Kim. Today my guest is Joshua Somogyi. I just learned how to pronounce his last name. But we've been friends for quite a while. I think the first time I met you, I opened up for someone at the Tin Angel.
Sure did.
Was it like Lucas Rossi or something?
Yeah, sure was.
Okay.
I took my wife as a gift. She was a big Lucas Rossi fan. She was watching that show, and it was you and Garen. I believe the guys they sound the alarm, but it was you, him, and then Lucas Rossi. And I was like, this guy can wail.
Rockstar Supernova.
Yeah,
Are you saying about me?
Okay. Yeah, you.
Okay.
I was
Cool.
super impressed. I was like, wow,
That's
wow.
really
The opening acts I liked a lot better than the main dude who he hasn't surfaced a whole lot recently. But
yeah, whatever happened to Lucas?
Whatever
right?
happened to Lucas? But hey, that's maybe another episode of The Process. We get Lucas in here.
Yeah, that would not be fun. So Josh has been in a band called Jaded Sun for many years, who's disbanded now, and he is working on his own solo material. I mean, is it somewhat serious now, or is it kind of just when you feel like it, when you can? Because I watch your hotel sessions too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's once you hit those middle 30s and you start staring at 40 a little bit. You know, I've taken on the professional route, and music has segued into the parts of my life where I can put it in, and I'm definitely looking to get an album recorded, at least an EP. I've got a bunch of songs. The last time we got together, we did some songwriting and kind of kicked some ideas around, and that kind of stoked me into writing a couple new tunes. And I would like to get those recorded, like to get an EP out maybe sometime this year, if not early next year. Okay. But again, hotel sessions are about to go back into full swing, and
Nice.
I'll introduce some of that new material in my nondescript hotel sessions.
And so you're basically saying, I guess, now that you're busier, how has that affected your sort of writing relationship? Has it made it a little bit more enjoyable, less enjoyable, a little bit more under the gun kind of thing?
Great question. Well, I've got twins. So Thor and Cordelia, my son and daughter.
And there's an interesting story behind them too.
Yeah.
They almost didn't make it.
Yeah. They spent Well, my son spent a little more than a month in the NICU after he was born, and my daughter was there for 2 weeks. They weighed 5 pounds total. My son was 2 pounds. My daughter was 3. But, after being in Jaded Sun for almost 10 years, we signed a record deal. We toured a lot, and it got to a point where, we were all older, and living in a van wasn't, so conducive of being married and having responsibilities and stuff like that. So
drag.
yeah, getting older was was crazy. But now I've got 2 kids, I've got a wife, I've got a house. Music is still a huge part of my life. I play whenever I can. I write whenever I can, and I often thought, looking back, if you could look back 15 years ago, and you're in bands, Stone Throne, and this is what you're doing. This was your soul. You were a missile, and that's what you were doing. I always thought to myself that once you had a family, once you hit a certain age, once you start taking antidepressants, how are you gonna write these songs? Where is this inspiration gonna come from?
Yeah.
And I've actually found a lot of inspiration just through reading. Lots of Kerouac, lots of and really into the beatnik, Allen Ginsberg, and I just found the way they describe things is that kind of stoked my flames a little more, and wanting to write. Another guy, a local guy, Carmen Costa, hands down one of the best songwriters I know.
I feel like I've heard his name before.
You definitely have. He's done a bunch of Radio 104.5 sessions.
Not in a while though.
Not in a while. He's again another amazing talent who you get older and You know, the chips don't fall in the way of these amazing songs that got written. They didn't hit the right time. He wound up having some songs on like MTV and stuff like that, as far as like on their shows.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So he did that, and you know, again, should anybody ever check out Carmen Costa's Stories of Iron and Pride, hands down one of the best written albums ever. And whenever I'm feeling a little like stuck, I'll throw that album on, and it'll unstick me a little bit as far as like music goes.
So nowadays, when you do like find the time, though, do you feel pressured to kind of come up with something? Are you attached to the outcome more or less, or what's it like?
So right now, I've got like a phone full of GarageBand, like half written songs. Mm-hmm. So again, great question. When I used to sit down to write, it would be, I'm gonna write this song about this subject, and I'm gonna write it to completion. And that's what I will stay on until that song is in my journal, it's in my phone, mm-hmm. and there's a final version.
Yeah, I like that.
You know, and that's how it would go.
Very committed and obsessed almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, this is my song, you know, this is the riff that I came up with for that song, this is the progression I'm going to use for that song. You know, how do I want the dichotomy to be? I'm a big fan of songs that are upbeat, but are maybe a little macabre, mm-hmm. a little, you know, have a darker meaning behind it. Sure. So that's kind of how I like focused my writing. Now, I'm finding myself listening a lot more Americana, a lot more.
I could tell by Spring '42.
Yeah,
we'll get to that for sure.
Yeah, so like, I mean, I've like, it's a shame what happened to Ryan Adams. It's a shame in the fact that like he turned out to be a creep. Right. Because again, his songwriting was really inspiring. Now, like, I hate to like put some of my favorite songs on that meant so much to me, and like you can't help but think about like that negative connotation that comes with that. But as far as Americana goes, I was listening to him and Shovels and Rope, and I was really getting into it, and I was like, you know what, I think I could like find a voice here. And
cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of where the Last Brontosaurus, my solo project, has kind of gone.
I love that name, by the way.
Yeah, it's been with me since I was like 25. A party gone awry. You know, younger days, after a show at the now defunct Crocodile Rock in Allentown, PA.
Oh, that's no more?
That's no more. No more. It got bulldozed not too long ago. But again, the years fly by now. You have kids and you're older. Man, time just like clips along. So it could have been 2 years. It could have been 3 years. I'm not positive. But yeah, I wound up eating something that maybe I shouldn't have. And I came to, and I was in my car, and it was very dark out. And all the streetlights kind of bent over, and they look like brontosauruses, and somebody told me that I was the baby brontosaurus, and I was the last one. And if I wanted to get home, I should follow these brontosauruses home.
Nice.
And that's the last thing that I clearly remember. So when I was talking to my buddies about it the next day in Jaded Sun, I was like, dude, if I ever get a solo project, it's going to be the Last Brontosaurus. And it's always been like my screen names. It was my AIM name. It was like
yeah. I dig that. I use right now I use my own name
because you have a baller ass name.
Thank you. I think I love it too.
And people know you though.
But I think there's something about like when you actually give yourself a name.
Yeah.
There's something like more band like about it or something like that.
100%.
Like I just feel like my record collection isn't really solo artists for the majority. It's like names.
Right.
Like even Elliott Smith, that's not his real name.
Right.
It's something else.
And that's what I'm saying. Like there's no way I'm rolling out into public as Josh Somogyi. It's just there's nothing you're gonna look at that anywhere and be like, oh no, probably not gonna get that. that record probably will not make it into my collection. But again, growing up, 1999, 2000, I was listening to a lot of New Found Glory. Heard about a band called Further Seems Forever, lead singer Chris Carrabba. I was like, this band is amazing.
Right.
And Swiss Army Romance comes out, Dashboard Confessional, just this one dude. He has a band name, and it's just this one dude.
Right.
And that's kind of like, 5 years later, after going to see him in all sorts of tiny venues all over the place, I was like, man, if I ever get a solo, I just do like a solo acoustic project, it's going to be The Last Brontosaurus. And, I was lucky enough to get that done.
Because my other thought about that, too, like giving yourself a name, like Last Brontosaurus, like if you do get like a band together with that, it's almost like, I don't know, I get this idea in my head that like people, like your players would be more drawn to being, identifying themselves with it a little bit easier, because it's not just like you, it's this thing.
Right. And that, I kind of feel the same way. Like it's, what's not autonomous, but like you can have a drummer, a guitar player come and go.
Yeah.
You can add a keyboard player if you want.
Right.
There's nothing set in stone. The Last Brontosaurus isn't an Americana acoustic band. It is what it is right now. But hey, maybe I hit the studio and my best friend Nick Peerless, he's one of the greatest guitar players I know, and he jams with me all the time. So like I get into the studio, I bring him with me. Hey, grab a bass player. My cousin Zach, he'll play drums sometimes, and hey, it could morph into something else. Grab a keyboard player, maybe somebody playing violin or something, maybe some fiddle, as it were. You just never know, and I kind of like that, because no matter what happens from here on in, musically, I don't suspect I'm ever going to be the next Bob Dylan or Ryan Adams or anybody like that, but I'll always have, my 20 years of playing in stalwart scene bands, and I can take this Last Brontosaurus thing and I can make it whatever I want.
And just have fun with it.
And just have fun with
Not
it.
take
You know
it
what I mean?
seriously.
Yeah. And again, like some of these new songs that I'm coming up with, I feel like they would have been Jaded Sun songs 5 years ago, 6 years ago even. And those would have been songs I would have taken to the guys. All right, well, hey, maybe I don't want to do that anymore, but, I bought a Korg. Now I want to, The Last Brontosaurus, go something like a Conor Oberst.
Bright Eyes.
Digital Ash.
I like that.
Wide Awake in Its Morning, and like Digital Ash, Digital Learn. So just basically take your thing that you have. This, you pull it out of your pocket one day and you're like, this is the Last Brontosaurus. I've played on Radio 104.5. I sold out Kung Fu Necktie. I played a bunch of shows, and I did it with these 6 songs. Cool. I always had those 6 songs. Those are Last Brontosaurus songs. I'm not some over-the-top big band that has to worry about, like, what's next? Do I keep that identity? I don't know, whatever 6 songs I come up with next, whenever I can get them finished. I've got my journal set up. It's like, I've got song 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they're all in varying stages of completion. And I spend a lot of time on airplanes for my job. So I got my headphones on, and I'll just listen to those half-completed songs, and I'll keep writing to them, and I've come up with like varying verses to where I'm like, wow, this is a new way to look at it, whereas before I would write it down in the journal. These are my chords, these are the licks, this is going to be the bridge, and
it must be done, like,
and this is it, and then I'm going to record it just like how it looks in this journal. It's going down. And now these songs are like, I hate to use the term like like wine. But like literally, I dump all the ingredients into this bucket. My iPhone. My iPhone is this fermenter for me now, a songwriting fermenter.
Yeah.
And now they live in there.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, I will pop that carboy plug off, and the smell of yeast comes out, and I was like, what was I going through at that moment? You know, it's like, all right, well, let's play something back. And boom, I'm right back in that mood. I remember what I was thinking. And it's like, okay, you know, capo at the 3rd fret, you know, this is the chord progression here. And that's what I've been going with. And, you know, I'll just play them back, mute the vocal track, and I'll just write all new lyrics to like this song. Maybe I've even had 2 songs where it's gone in like a completely different direction. It's like, all right, well, actually, you know, I can throw these lyrics in now, and this is even better. And I've got this lyrics, you know, maybe they'll fit somewhere else down the road.
So you're making me think about a couple of things. So it just seems like the contrast between how you used to write and verse now is a lot more free, and it's a lot more. I'll kind of sort of take my time with it and ferment as you're talking about. I almost envision like you sort of, you know, being a dad and then also traveling around and then also sort of accumulating more ideas for your current ideas.
Right.
And just kind of like reshaping them and working them out that way. So that's definitely a very beautiful thing. Did you feel when you used to write, did you feel a little bit more like less joy out of the outcome of the process, I should say, versus like now? I feel like you're enjoying it more now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because before it would be like, you know, well, I've got this idea, I've got this band, and we're playing shows, and we're gonna make an album. So, was it cathartic to like get those feelings out? And kind of, yeah, sure. But at the same time, it was, well, is this going to jive with my band?
Right.
Is this going to, like, how will this sound once I plug my Gibson into my Mesa Boogie half stack? Like, what does it turn into? You know, like, you know, and oftentimes, like, you go from writing on your Martin or your Epiphone acoustic to delivering it to these guys, and they're like, all right. This is all right. Your lead guitar player is like, yeah, we're gonna here's some gain. We've got some pedals, and it's gonna turn into something. It's gonna turn into something altogether different. Like the words will be there, the chord progression that you wrote will be there, but now it's, you know, alive. It's something new, and that was always the fun part for me because I pretty much always wrote by myself.
Yeah.
You know, and then like you bring it to the band, and the band is like, hey, awesome. Let's turn it up. And that's what happened. So it was always like, you know, here I am, Dr. Frankenstein, bringing this thing, and like they throw their lightning on it, and it's like, wow, now it's this other thing, and that's what was like so cool. It's what I still love about the.
Were you I look back at myself and think like I was a dictator.
Yeah.
How were you with bands? Like,
oh
did you,
God, I was, dude. It was always like having...
As far as ideas and stuff.
As far as ideas go, I was always super open.
That's cool.
To like how they put their spin on it, you know? But at the same time, it was like, you know, well, these are my words. You know, I'm not changing my words.
Oh, they would criticize your words.
Sometimes. Sometimes. Most of the time, though.
I kind of like that, though. I hate experiencing that, but I feel like that's healthy, though. Because it'll challenge you. It'll challenge you to get better at it. As
a young musician who you think like you've got it like figured out, and we all did.
Right.
You know, I feel like there's a certain amount of growth that comes along with like being in a band. Like, yeah, you wrote these songs. That's all good, but I wish, like looking back on it, it would have been a more unified process. Like 4 dudes get together. It's like, yeah, I got this chord progression. Awesome. Like, hey, I got this drum lick. I've got like, I wish it would have been a little more of that, and it would have been like, you know,
a little bit more organic.
Yeah. Rather than just like, hey, Josh, go write some songs. come back when they're all done, you know.
But are you like me? Are you attached to like the sort of mad genius thing, or did you used to like strive for that? Like, so you wanted to have everything sort of finished and then bring it to them so that you could feel like better about yourself, kind of.
Definitely. Like I wanted to have it be a complete idea, so that the only thing that happened was electric guitars, drums, bass.
Right.
The thing that always irked me was there was never any backing vocals. I never was with a band. I never was the band that like anybody was like ready to like step up and like do backing vocals. And that was always something. Even now, like on the way over here, one of the playlists that I have on Spotify has some of our last record on it, and I'm just like, man, this would have been so cool if like, you know, Paul or Mike would have just, you know, even just some gang vocals, anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
And when you see a band do it well, too, it's almost like the instrumentation doesn't matter as much because the voices are so thick.
Right.
The harmonies are so good. It's just like, wow, that's freaking cool.
Right.
So, like, I'm sort of sighing and, like, agreeing with you. But, like, Stone Throne, my brother always sang backup, which was great. And we had a drummer at one point who also sang, too, which was great. But, like, these days, I had, like, my last band wasn't able to find anybody that could really sing. I actually did have Kevin Cox sing with me, but you know, I love more voices, just like you.
Yeah.
And everything like that.
I feel like it's like, again, I mean, maybe I'm old. I don't know what the scene looks like because I'm not playing out every week like, you know, in clubs anymore. But like looking around, like I still keep my ear to the ground, and I'm always checking in with guys that are in bands, and like there's just nothing in the local scene that I'm listening to now, and I'm like, wow, that could make it somewhere else. And I feel like, I'm not saying that I could necessarily, but I just feel with like the right mix of, you know, ideas and voices, that just there's got to be like a better Philly band out there right now. Like I've been thinking about that a lot too. Maybe it's my yearning to like get back out there and like do something. But again, man, once you're a dad and a husband and you got a company and you're, you know,
your priorities change for
sure. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, you know, that's why I do those nondescript hotel room sessions. It's a way to make me feel still connected to the thing that I am absolutely most passionate about, which is...
Well, I'm sort of really happy for you, actually, because, like, your story is, like, you were in this band, and you had your priorities, and then all of a sudden, like, well, not all of a sudden, but you eventually got older, and you had your priorities shifted, which is, you know, from someone who's actually just starting out or whatever, that always sounds like a bummer, but it sounds like it, as far as it affecting your writing process, it was kind of a good thing, actually, because now you're a little bit more happy. The songs breathe a little bit more as far as the creative process, and you're not as attached to the outcome as much. Now, I was listening the other day to a podcast, and they were talking about, like, being just all about the outcome kind of makes you miserable in your craft, and you kind of just, like, not... You know, it makes you not love it as much, and you should really focus more on just creating shit just for creating shit.
Right.
You know? So that begs the question. I'm sorry, this is loaded here, but like, that begs the question for me then, like, because I'm all about, like, you can probably relate because you're such in good physical shape these days, about training really hard.
Right.
Like, you know, I've kind of backed off a little bit, but for like the last year and a half or so, I was writing every day, just almost compulsively, just every day, just trying to get something done, just in the spirit of, you know, trying to get better at my craft and trying to do something every day, working it out like a muscle. But I realized I was sort of getting burnt out, and it reflected in the songs. So. Because music is, I feel like music needs to come from a place of inspiration and fun and passion and like a real place of love, if you will.
Right.
Not a place of work necessarily. Even, that's not to say that you can't write a song that's, like, bust your ass and write a song that sounds really free. But you know what I'm getting at,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So like, where is that line? I mean, or do you just still just write? Or do you think it's still healthy to write compulsively if you can?
If you can write compulsively, you know,
Or every daily, I should say.
yeah, like I would say sure. And this sounds super whimsical, but another one of my best friends, my former drummer, Paul Nance.
Oh yeah, he's Wendy's husband,
Yeah,
right?
Wendy Rollins' husband. He always said that like songs are out here, they're floating around
In the ether.
Yeah, and there are some people that are just attached to that realm, if you will, that can just kind of pull them down every now and again.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it's those songs that like you pull them down and it's like the lightning in the bottle, so to speak.
Yeah, that's always great when it happens.
Right,
You know?
and again, and I feel like as an early songwriter, I felt like they were just coming to me, man. Like, oh wow, here's another one. You show it to your friends. They're like, yeah, that's great. That could be on the radio, man.
Right.
High fives all around. Oh, I got another one and another one, and you realize it's just because like you haven't used this chord yet. You know,
I was just gonna say the novelty of just it being all new.
right. To where now, you know, I'll be 39, and you know I started writing when I was 22, and now it's like, well, I've used all these chords before. I've you know,
Yeah.
what new is there? And then every now and again, like, bam, like that, you know, out there in the ether, like, I'll be sitting in a coffee shop in LA, and I'll be like, you know, I'll just look at this person.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking to somebody, and whatever they're doing, I make a story about them. Like, I just stare down, make a story about them. I spend a ton of time in airports. I'll find somebody that's crying or upset, or,
That's cool.
you know, and I'll give them their backstory, and I will think about that for an entire flight. And that's where I said, like, you know, I'll break out my phone, put my headphones on, go through my fermentator of, you know, half-finished songs,
Yeah.
and I'll apply that story to, like, whatever story that I just created for, like, this person.
Interesting.
There. Yeah, because, like, my wife, we've been together for 12 years. It's not about heartbreak anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of things are born out of heartbreak, or you know, that whole, like, you know, significant other, you know, lost love,
Absolutely.
pining away.
I've classified that kind of those kinds of songs for me as like junk food, kind of easy to
Sure.
go to, right? Just easy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Easy to write to.
Right.
You know.
And again, I mean, that's great. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. Definitely junk food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can easily pop that bag open whenever.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you can only like look back at those moments so many times before like the well gets run dry from, you know, that one heartbreak that you had almost 20 years ago.
So you can really, I mean, like for me, it's all about like it being authentic to my life, or like if I am like, I think I'm just kind of in awe right now that you can kind of sit and watch somebody and then just write a story about them. That's pretty cool. Like I wouldn't allow myself to get away with that. Not that what you're doing is wrong. It's just for some reason I would feel guilty about that.
And see, I used to. I used
like
to, but
like I'm bullshitting. You
correct.
know?
But if, like, for instance, Bruce Springsteen. If you get the chance, I don't know if you're a Springsteen fan. I never really was. My dad was, and
Not
like
historically, but
yeah. So I never was a Springsteen fan.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, like, I grew up listening to Springsteen records because that's what my dad listened to, and you know, it was like, you know, whether it was my dad or with my mom. Like my mom was listening to like Bob Dylan and just primarily Bob Dylan, and and my dad, like, you know, he was listening to like Springsteen and Uriah Heep and these 70s bands. But Bruce Springsteen live on Broadway, listen to it on Spotify in its entirety.
I keep hearing that. People keep telling me
Bruce
about
Springsteen, I have a whole new respect for his catalog.
it. Yeah, that's what people are saying.
So he, and what's crazy was he said, and it made me feel better. He's like, I made a career of writing songs about working in a factory or getting pulled over by the cops, or he goes, and I never stepped foot in a factory a day in my life. So this guy has made a rock and roll Hall of Fame career out of being a bullshitter.
Right.
Like literally, like, you know, hey, he's a guy from Freehold, New Jersey that wrote songs about his friends' dads.
Right.
And made a fortune of being, you know, salt of the earth kind of dude.
Sure.
And
people love Springsteen too.
Of course. Because he's a man of the people, but in his Broadway shows, he's like, look, man, I never did any of this shit. Mm-hmm. I just wrote it. And it's in that line of thinking where it's like, what do you do when you write a song? You're telling a story.
Yeah.
All of my songs are a story that were either born out of my life, that I added some extra stuff to. I took some creative liberties, and I grew it into something else.
Right.
Now I look back on it, and that's a life of its own right there.
So while you're saying that, it's a great segue into a Spring of '42, because it sounds like a real thing. I was like thinking, is this about his like granddad or his, you know, somebody in his life? It sounded very real.
So I was
a war story.
Yeah, so I was in the Army, and I, like every kid that joined the Army at high school, you know, I left a girlfriend behind, and it was, you know, the running joke was, you know, Jody is gonna get your girl. I don't know, I forget who Jody was, but Jody was like this, you know, this Donis that would come in and sleep with your girlfriend while you were away, and that was the thing. Well, Jody definitely got my girl, and that was a turning point for me, that where, like, you know, you suffer that first real heartbreak. And that ate me up, and I kept it with me when I first started writing songs. Mm-hmm. Like, that was it. I took that heartbreak, and just, those were like my first 8 songs I ever wrote. And Spring of '42, like, my grandfather was in the Navy. All of my grandmother's brothers, they were all in the Navy. Dad's family, they were in the Army.
Wow, I didn't know you had such a military family.
Yeah, again, I'm not like the gung ho hoorah, you know, kind of guy anymore. But at the same time, I forget what movie I was watching with what's his name from The Notebook. Who's that
Ryan
guy?
Gosling.
There you go, Ryan Gosling. And
what movie was it?
I probably was The Notebook. I don't know. So
just be honest.
Yeah, it was The Notebook. It was probably The Notebook. But basically, I was like, if I was gonna write a story and Ryan Gosling was like the main character, and I wanted to make this song about World War II, how would I go about this? You know. Well, what didn't I want? You know, when I was 17 and I joined the Army, and I told my girlfriend, and she was, you know, she was upset that I'd have to go away and the whole thing. But, you know, I wasn't going off to fight some great war or whatever. I was just trying to get out of the trailer park, you know. So it was like it's like, all right, well, you know, I don't have any cool stories like that. But, you know, my grandfather, he was in the Navy. All my uncles, they were in the Navy during World War II. I have, you know, uncles that were at Pearl Harbor or whatever. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. And I actually wrote Spring of '42 at the very last ever Jaded Sun acoustic show at the Tin Angel. Oh. Sitting in the green room, waiting to go on, and I came up with that riff.
Oh, cool.
And I was thinking about it. I was like, it was the spring of '42, and there was no one that was like you, I'd say.
Okay.
And that's all I had.
Okay.
So I just kept singing that.
Right.
Carmen Costa was also on that bill, and he walked by. He goes, he's like, dude, I'd buy that record. Mm-hmm. And he just kept walking. And I was like, yeah, so would I. Mm-hmm. and I put it down. And once, you know, I turned to the last Brontosaurus, and I decided that was going to be a thing.
This is an older song, then. Definitely.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was newer.
It's old in the fact of where it came from.
Right, right.
So, like, years later then, when I finally decided, like, this is going to be my new thing,
Mm-hmm.
I went back and one of those half-finished songs in a garage band was a Spring of 42, and I wrote the story about it. Like, it was a Spring of 42, there was no one that was like you. That was high school, you know, and then June of 42, you know, the Army came to take me away, and you know, and you got to keep it short and sweet, kind of like, you know, I'm not going to tell the whole story about 1940, June of 43, you know, so it's like a couple lines about the Spring of 42, a couple lines about June of 42, and then, like, you know, the story skips ahead to, you know, it was the fall of 43 and bullets are flying by, and you know, and how this thought of this girl is still getting this young GI through, because you don't have anything else to live for over there except getting home. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do. You know, but how do I end it? Oh God, I'm going to kill this guy. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kill him. He's going to die over there. It's going to be sad. It's going to be a sad song. No. I don't want him to die.
Right.
No. His girlfriend's going to cheat on him and leave him. Yeah, that'll be sad too. No, I don't want that. No, you know what? You know, end of The Notebook, man. Ryan Gosling. They're going to kiss in the rain, and he's going to come off a boat, and he's going to be limping, and he's, you know, injured, and they're going to live happily ever after. That's going to be the story.
What swayed you into that direction, though? Was it what made you say, "All right, this is gonna be, the Ryan Gosling thing's gonna be the ending, not the sad ending"?
It was basically just watching The Notebook, and like the whole, like, you know, the love over so many years. And I was like, if Ryan Gosling was in a movie about World War II, this would be the movie. Spring of 42, right. Starring Ryan Gosling.
I just clicked, I guess.
And that's basically every time I sing it, I have a tendency to sing with my eyes closed. I will envision that movie every time I play it. And that's where it went for me. And the subsequent songs that I wrote after that, that are on my last Brontosaurus Bandcamp, we're all in and of that kind of like same vein, and
rhythmically, you mean this?
Or
two-step kind of.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was an older song, or the origins were older. What kind of made you remember it? I would imagine years have gone by. You've probably written other stuff, or you just forgot about it. What made you remember that and like say, you know what, now I can finish it?
Basically, more confidence in myself after years of being like kind of heartbroken over the breakup of my band. I really kind of mourned the loss of Jaded Sun. Like,
man, me too.
Yeah, it was like a super bummer. Like, funny story, my Gibson Les Paul has not been plugged in or played since January 2nd, 2011. That was the last time
show.
At World Cafe Live we played. It was a great show.
So it was January 2nd, 2011?
Yep.
The last Stone Thrones show was about January 2nd, 2012.
There you go. See, so it's like New Year, you know, and everybody.
Yeah, crappy way to start the new year.
It totally was. I mean, it was literally like 2 weeks later that we decided that was going to be it, you know, and it hangs on my wall, and I stare at it all the time. I sold off my rig. I sold off, you know, my pedals and stuff, and I got my acoustics, and I've got that Les Paul, and maybe my son will play one day, or my daughter, or you know, or whoever, or it'll just sit in my office collecting dust, or maybe, just maybe, you know, 2020, the 10-year anniversary of Jaded Sun's Prospect Heights. Maybe we'll.
So maybe I missed it, but like, was there a lot of reasons why the band broke up?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was kind of like, we're all in our 30s now. We all have wives. There's that. So you're kind of already balancing like home and this last gasp. We got a record deal. You know, this is great. This is everything we wanted.
Yeah, so how did that come into play as far as like, okay, if you guys are breaking up, do you guys still owe the company anything?
Nope, because we had run, and that was the thing, we had run the course of our 1 year, 1 album cycle. And we didn't owe them anything. They didn't really owe us anything. And we were like, well, we can re-up. and we had our fancy New York City attorney whose name escapes me currently, but he was like Nelly's attorney and Billy Joel's attorney. And
oh, cool.
so it was like, you go to his office and it's like, wow, look at all these diamond records and these, this is gonna be us one day. Simple Plan. They
Right.
represented then. Their records were on his wall, and
Wow.
yeah. So we were gonna go back and talk to him, and basically, somebody in the band that was not me was like, hey, if we don't do a full U.S. tour this year, I'm out. And I was like, okay, cool. We went to the record deal. We went to the record label. Hey, if we're going to do this, what kind of tour support could you offer us?
Mm-hmm.
We're all in our 30s and we're not trying to maybe live in a van.
Right.
And that sounds so terrible because it's like, come on, guys, suck it up. But at the same time, that was where our heads were at. And our numbers wouldn't match. And that was it.
Your numbers wouldn't match.
Like we were like, we need X amount of dollars, and they're like, all right, well, you'll owe us this plus this, and then it's going to be like a 3-album cycle, and we're like, I don't know, this it's just not going to work out, and that's what happened, and we all just kind of like, well, that's it then.
Yeah, your attorney was telling you probably it wasn't a good idea too, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And it turns out that the record label that we signed with, West 80th, they had Sony distribution, which we thought was awesome. This is great. You can look up West 80th Records and Neil Sheehan, and you will find horror stories about what that guy did and how he used MySpace to like manipulate a ton of young artists to basically put up a band called Black Veil Brides, and that was like a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother podcast.
Okay.
But yeah, we kind of absolved, and that was it. And we just kind of like, that was it.
Yeah.
Paul went on to play in a band called The Loud Company, which was an amazing band, and I was really sad to see those guys have to kind of like, Paul moved to Atlanta, and they were really good. They've segued into the Bad Ups. Another great, like, again, as far as like great local bands go, I would pin like, as far as like punk rock and roll, like those guys got it. So that's a band to check out too, the Bad Ups. But yeah, mourn the loss of Jade Sun, and years later come back to Spring of 42, just because it was the closest thing that I had to a complete song. It was the closest thing that I had that was something totally different than Jaded Sun. And I kind of like, that's what I pinned my, this is going to be my new start.
Yeah.
And
cool.
it's going to be this. It doesn't sound like Jaded Sun. It's like a new girl. It's like, this one's going to be better than my old girl anyway. And I'm not going to think about her at all, man. I'm not going to think about her at all. I miss her so much.
Right.
And, I'll still break out Jaded Sun songs, and because at the end of the day, those are, I wrote those songs, and I'm going to keep playing them, but that's how Spring of 42 came to be, and that's what kind of stoked my getting back into writing again, and really taking up the moniker The Last Brontosaurus.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So now I gotta ask you, like, when you can kind of make up these fictional characters and these fictional stories, so it's got to be different than performing it on stage. It's got to feel different than like an autobiographical song, which mine more or less tend to be, generally speaking.
Sure. So, when I listen to other people's songs, I feel them a different. Like when I listen to my own songs, I'm like, yeah, I wrote that. Yeah, that's kind of like, yeah, it's my life. Like I don't feel it. Like when I listen to somebody else's song, I'm like, wow, like I'm connecting with that. I'm feeling that, When I'm writing these other stories, like I feel like I'm connecting to them more.
Interesting.
Because I'm looking at it as that bystander, and now not only is this my song, but this is this little world that I created for right there, and it'll tug at my heartstrings, like, and it's so weird. It's like writing in the third person almost. It's like I just made this little vignette of whatever this, you know, portal into this other little world is about, and I can watch it and replay it like a movie, and
that's awesome.
Yeah,
it seems like such a simple thing that I like never thought about. Like, it doesn't have to be autobiographical all the time.
Dude, because
you know
because I feel like anything, man, the well's gonna run dry, and you can force whatever you want, and you can write every day, but at some point, you're gonna lose that, like, you can only attack this subject from this part of your life so many times before it's like, well, you know, what more am I going to write about that? How is that going to sound genuine to my audience? Like, if that's what
if you keep continuing to draw from that, it's like, all right, it's going to stop sounding authentic if I, you know, keep forcing that.
Right.
Well, so do you feel that the same applies to when you're writing fictional stuff too? Like, all right, now I should probably start writing about myself because now I'm sort of running out of ideas for other stuff. You feel like it's less or more?
No, I feel like I don't want to say infinite is a big word, but like next week I'll be in Boston, and then from Boston I'll be in White Plains, New York for a few days, and my neighborhood's growing. So literally, like, we're gonna tie dye some clothes later. My kids want to tie dye some clothes.
That's
so
cool.
Today I was running around looking for shirts to tie dye, and you know, again, you see people out, you see people going through things, you overhear a conversation, and any one of those things is just like, man, wow, wonder what's happening in that car right now.
Right.
Even just driving over here, like, you know, I'll just stare at you. Maybe I'm a creep. I don't know.
People watcher.
Yeah. So like, you know, I'll just look into the car, and
nice
again, it's like looking into that portal that I was just talking about. It's like there's a world happening in that car, and you don't know what they're going through. You know, their hands on their head, they look tired. You know, maybe they're drumming on the steering wheel. You can, no matter what's going on in there, like
picking their nose.
Yeah. I mean that I'm gonna look away because I don't want to watch it. But at the same time, I'll come up with like wherever that girl's going.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then like, you know, whatever that guy's doing, like, you know, he looks pretty busted up right now, or you know, hey, that guy is like falling asleep at the wheel. Like, where did he just come from? You know, just. Stuff like that, and I feel like it's all out there.
Yeah.
And I've got so many places just to kind of like, you know.
Yeah, it's like there's so many, not infinite, but it's like things that are happening, and it's interesting, and you just can always write about it because things always happen and people are always doing stuff.
We live in one of the largest populated places in America. You know, Philadelphia, it's vibrant. It's filled with all sorts of stuff. It's filled with history. And basically, you can cruise around on any given day, and just walk up and down my street, and there's tourists, there's hipsters, there's homeless people there.
Like, now just thinking about it, like, I think my first ever song was a song called Getaway when I was like 14 years old. And
God.
And one of the verses was actually just about a fictional girl.
Right.
And I sort of stopped doing that. No, not even for a particular reason, but I think for me, it's like I have this like bullshit threshold or meter. Like, I'm so hard on myself when it comes to like, no, that's not real. You're lying. You're bullshitting. Nope, don't do that. Like, you know, you're full of shit. This is wrong. You know, I get dogmatic about the way I think about.
100%.
You know.
But so basically, then what you're doing is you're handcuffing your process.
Yeah.
So if you're handcuffing your process, you're giving yourself a governor, and you've got a guitar, you're one of the most gifted musicians I know.
Oh, dude.
Like you truly are. Like the fact, like your ability to write and play and sing and play is like, if you take the governor off and you say, look, man, I'm just gonna tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
And do I want it to be a long drawn out story that'll never get radio play, or am I looking to craft a 3-minute and 30-second, radio single? Whatever it is I'm gonna do right here, you can do it. You've got the ability.
Right.
You can say, I'm gonna take this story and I'm gonna make up a story about this guy that I saw at Starbucks, or make up the story about this guy that I saw at the mall. And it's gonna be something that maybe I relate to,
Mm-hmm.
but it's gonna be 96% fictional, but it's something that I can look at and say, hey man.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, it's probably more fun too, because, writing about yourself is cool, and I enjoy it, but it can be painful too.
Yeah, but again,
it can be painful and sort of embarrassing almost, because even when you're writing something that is true and is right, the rhyme seems good, whatever, it's still embarrassing to like sing. That's like the difference I would assume.
Or being a married guy, my wife will listen to this podcast, but like, you start writing something and you bring it to her and she's like, oh, who's that about? You know what? I saw this girl in her car and like I made up a story about her, and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's like a way to like protect myself, but again, I mean, all of my heartbreak, thank God, knock on wood, Kelly, don't leave me. All of that stuff is kind of like in the past, and like writing songs about like your day-to-day life as like a dad and a husband.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can write a song about like, hey, I changed a diaper today, or like, hey, but autobiographically, outside of like who is it going to relate to? And that's what I always ask myself, like, yeah, dads all over the country.
Dads all over the country.
Dads all over the country. You can, relate to this one thing about not sleeping. But
Yeah.
how can I take not sleeping and turn it into like a cool song that maybe might not be so pigeonholed to like dads across America.
What about like your emotional world rocked when all of a sudden your children were born? Should be like an awesome experience, but then all of a sudden there was this critical thing that could have happened.
Sure. And like immediately, like the first thing everybody's like, oh, you're gonna do the Creed thing, and are you gonna write a song about your children? I'm like,
did they write a song about that?
Yeah, with Arms Wide Open.
Oh, that's what that's about. Okay.
So every a bunch of people were like razzing me about that. They were like, you gonna write your Arms Wide Open song? Like, probably not. Because again, I feel like certain things like that would be a little too contrived. But like, as far as like an open letter to my children,
Mm-hmm.
I've written many of them,
and that's what Spring of 42 sounds kind of like almost. For me, like I listened to it a couple weeks ago, but it was almost like it felt like a tribute to like someone in your family, but
right. And again, that's not the autonomy. It's not the word I'm looking for. It's not androgyny either. But it's like, ambiguity. There you go. Thank you.
I love that one.
There it is.
Yes.
And it's ambiguous enough to where you can listen to it and be like, wow, he's singing about his grandfather. Or, wow, he is in his 30s, not late 80s. So what's that about?
Mm-hmm.
Story, man. It's a fun song. It's a fun kind of that two-step feel. It's it always gets people clapping and listening, and it's a damn fictional song about World War II that I was not there. I knew people that were there,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know the first thing about what it was like to be overseas in World War II doing that stuff. And that's just what I'm getting at. It's you take the governor off, and you allow your bullshit meter to be off.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm going to tell this story. Because all my songs were stories anyway. If you listen to every Jaded Sun record off of Prospect Heights and off of Machinery of the Stars, every song is, you know, between 3 and 5 minutes of a story. That's one, like, kind of, like, rule about my songs. Like, I always try to have, like, a complete thought and, you know, a beginning, middle, and end. And, like, I'll try to put it in that 5 minutes to where...
Sure. Now let's talk about some technique now. Do you start with your lyrics first?
Most of the time, it sounds weird, but I'll let my guitar write them for me. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll just start with the guitar. Mm-hmm. Sit down, start playing around with stuff, move a capo around a little bit, maybe detune things, maybe, you know, put the guitar in a different tuning, and start messing around. And before I know it, like, I hear something. Mm-hmm. Maybe, you know, it's like, all right, well, okay, well, this is a verse. This is kind of how the song feels. Jump in the notebook. And
you say notebook, this is like stuff that you've written down, like a character or something.
Right.
I just noticed like someone at the airport.
Right.
Okay.
This will be like, you know, here's some notes from last week, and I'll take a couple of those and like I'll build the story out, and it all starts on my guitar, and from the chords and the progression, I'll get the words, I'll get the feel. It's like, you know, now the hook. You know, it's gotta have a hook. Mm-hmm. And usually within like, I used to start off by like, this is gonna be the hook, like this is my hook. Now I build the story, and then here's the hook, you know, and it's like, you know, the most
important piece,
right? But like, but the Spring of '42, you know, that's just one line in the song, you know, it's like that's how it kicks off. Yeah.
So it ties everything together.
Yeah.
Now, see, I have learned to modify my process in you know, in recent years. Yeah, I try to approach it from all different ways. Starting with like either like a subject first. Like I met somebody when I was in recovery. He was a famous songwriter. I'm not gonna like blow his anonymity, but he was saying he just keeps a book of titles, and he starts with titles. Like that's all he does, just write titles down, and then he can build his hook out from there. And which, like, this was years ago, and it made me start to think, all right, well, I noticed something about the way I write. I write sequentially, like I write the intro, then the verse, then like it doesn't. I guess it doesn't have to be always that. You can certainly start with the hook first, and then sort of branch out if you need to. And I love doing that because I think it's a better problem to have to like come up with verses than to actually come up with a chorus or a hook, because it's always, for me, like I'm always building up to this thing, and it's like I got all this build up, and now it's like, fuck, I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah, where do I go? Is this gonna be like a big chorus? Is this a sing along? Like, where do you go with it?
And that's where the governor comes back.
That's right, and that's when you realize like what do I have to do to get around this roadblock?
Yeah.
Do I let myself write some BS?
Mm-hmm.
Why not? There's nobody coming down to you saying, hey, you gotta write like this. And even if there was somebody coming down on you saying, you have to write like this, or this should be that, or, you know, you don't know until you do it. Just go with your gut. Go with like what you're feeling. And
was your label ever criticizing any of your music before you recorded it after?
No. I mean, if you listen to Prospect Heights, it was, that whole record was like, it fit together so nicely. Mm-hmm. And there was only one track that like we were like, hey, you know what? Probably gonna throw that one out.
But the label was never critical. They didn't come in. Oh, that's awesome.
Nope. They were, again, the song Cold Blue, Wichita Over and Out, and Daddy's Little Dancer, which was like probably the softest song on that record, mm-hmm. acoustic guitar wise. But again, man, that song, that's born out of bullshit. That I wrote that song, Daddy's Little Dancer, about my Boston Terrier going potty on a pee pad. I sat in front of her while we were trying to housebreak her, and good. I sang, "Your daddy's little dancer, you're gonna go potty on your pee pad, yeah." And I was like, "Potty on your pee pad, potty on your pee pad, yeah." I was like, this is catchy as hell.
Was that the final lyric?
No, okay. Hell no. No, it was Daddy's Little Dancer. So I made up a story about a girl who was a stripper that got into cocaine and like eventually like awful things happened to her. And that's it was born out of my Boston Terrier like dancing back and forth on her gate, trying to go potty on her pee pad. But again, it's allowing yourself to say, all right, this is a cool riff. This is a cool melody line. Mm-hmm. You keep the party in your pocket, put your panties in a purse like a thief. Do I know a girl that did that? Mm-hmm. Maybe. I don't know.
It sounds cool though.
Right, it sure does. So I'm just going to build this story, and I'm going to make this little world for her, and this is going to be it. So I'm going to open that portal up. And that was one of the first times when I let my bullshit governor come off.
Right.
Because I was like, this is too cool not to pass up. And if I write this song about, what can I possibly write this song about?
Yeah.
Just, there it is, man. Mm-hmm. Just any given night as a 22-year-old at a strip club, and if you're stuck, go to a strip club, man. There's a world of people that are just there that you can write stories about. It's,
I bet, man.
You know what I mean? So it's you can find inspiration anywhere, and I guess the biggest part of my process, as this podcast is called.
Yes.
It is the process with Judah Kim.
And I think in the future when people say that, I'm just going to have like an audio thing that goes ding.
Yeah, 100%. It's so very Philly too. I mean, this is the process. This is the city of the process.
See, I didn't even think of that. And then I was like, oh yeah, the Sixers, right?
Yeah. But my process is, I like to tell a story. Mm-hmm. And that story, I know it shouldn't be 6 minutes long. Mm-hmm. I know it shouldn't be 7 minutes long.
Yeah.
I'm not playing guitar solos. I'm not adding gongs and, I don't have synth breaks. I don't know. I'm not ELO. Yeah. I'm not Kansas. This is not, progressive in any way, shape, or form. This is going to be an acoustic song that can be played and purvey a message and a feeling to whoever's listening, whether it's you sitting in a room with me or me heaping one of these songs in between Don Henley's Boys' Summer and John Waite's I'll Be Missing You, and I'll throw one of my originals in there right in the middle, and people are like, wow, who did that other song? Well, it's my song.
Yeah, don't you love... I got that last night at a gig. Somebody was like, what is that? And I was like, that was one of mine. It's like, oh, really? It sounded so professional. I was like, yes, thank you very much.
Yeah,
it's awesome,
and again, it's like you sneak one of yours in, and to still get that feedback of somebody saying, wow, I really dug that song. I really felt it. Where can I download it? Or where can I stream it?
Oh, you know what's also great is like, so I do the cover gigs too, like Josh does, cover music. So I play mostly covers. And then sometimes you'll get a room that is sort of receptive to your playing, and then after a song or two, they'll clap their hands. But then when they do it after your song, it's like, damn, all right. They didn't know that,
And it's and again, it's that, I don't want to say egocentric, but as a songwriter, as an artist, as a person who makes music, you're still in front of a whole bunch of people that you don't know, that when you're coming up in bands, you're dragging your friends out to every show.
Oh, yeah.
And you're hoping that, like, you get a gig opening up for somebody bigger, and you can get in front of a whole bunch of people. So here you are now in a room full of like 70, 80 people. You're playing these cover songs. And
they're eating dinner, probably.
They're eating dinner, they're drinking, they're talking over you.
Yeah.
You hit them with a cover, and like 10 people are like, oh my God, I love that song. And they're clapping. Now you have their attention. Because whether or not, you play another song, they realize, oh wow, this is good, you're good. This isn't BS. This guy, he's gonna play all my favorite songs tonight. He's gonna play Wonderwall. I can feel it. I can't wait. It's gonna be great. And you hit him with like a song like Spring of '42. Mm-hmm. People are like, yeah, I love that song. Yeah, no, you don't even know it. Yeah. You're drunk. But yeah, that's kind of like that. Like, all right, well, I'm gonna throw my material out there now because I have your attention. Mm-hmm. And when you ask me later, I'll be like, yeah, here's my Bandcamp.
Right.
Right. And that's just the tough part about making music nowadays. It's not buy my CD, buy my T-shirt, buy my merch.
Oh, don't get me started, please.
Sorry.
Streaming. There's nothing good about music streaming, and I've come to just believe now because anybody anywhere can put out anything, but it's still a problem for most people that put out something to get people to listen to you. I mean, and it was still a problem back in the day, back in the 90s or even the early 2000s. But if you were a band, you could at least prove yourself and sell some CDs.
Right.
And you could sell something.
Right.
Now what do you sell? It's all about it's like building your brand now.
100%. And you have to have a brand. You have to have something that's tangible because it's not even about how many CDs did you sell. Mm-hmm. How many CDs do you sell at a local show?
Right.
Or even your local shows. How many people are showing up to those local shows?
And what I'm kind of resentful of towards, I don't know if I should, my anger might be misplaced here, but I think the reaction from musicians as a whole doesn't seem to be one. I mean, we tend to do these gigs for low cost. I love playing the boat because it's actually a good paying. That's what I'm saying. We get paid good money on the boat.
That's right.
But there are some other gigs that you'll get or offers for. It's like, really, I'm not gonna play for that little money. Don't people realize they get music for free? They get it for free. It's 24/7.
Right. And
then what irks me even more is that Christmas time comes, you see 20% off on records, at a record store. But get the fuck out of here! Don't do that to yourself. And then you have artists doing it with their merch too. And it's don't do that. There's no reason to do that.
I'm totally with you, and that's what I'm saying. They want somebody to come in and be a human jukebox for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then, I'll pay you $125.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that's great and everything, but I did take 3 hours out of my night. I'm not. Again, when we were younger.
No, I'm saying it's like the reaction to there being you can't sell records anymore from musicians. There doesn't seem to be one.
There's not because it's before you definitely had to book studio time. You definitely had to go get your record recorded. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, there's some people that are really good at doing what they do and they can record in their house and it's going to sound amazing, but nothing beats going to a studio with an engineer and people that know exactly what they're doing to put your record together.
Yeah.
That's going to cost money.
Money.
Yeah. And no matter what you do.
It continues to cost more money if you think about it, because the game now is to get it in front of people, you have to get in front of the right tastemakers and right playlists, and that can cost a significant amount of money.
Sure.
It's almost like the market can be bought, but you have to have money.
Exactly.
And where does that come from if you can't sell anything?
Pay to play.
Exactly.
So it's gone from you have to sell 100 tickets to open up for whoever. You have to sell 100 tickets or we're not going to ask you back.
Right.
To now, how many followers do you have on Spotify?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out I've got 42 monthly listeners and
right.
It's, but that's not part of the process. This is about songwriting.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It was me who got
No. It's okay. and then we fed off each other there for a minute. Where we're just son of a bitch.
But I wanted to ask you something. We should probably wrap soon because we're doing a healthy amount of time, which is great. We talked about a lot of good stuff in this, and I'm really excited about it. What I wanted to ask you is, you ever just walk into a different house or a different room, just and like all, and you have your guitar with you, and then all of a sudden like let's say you've been stuck writing in your same place, and then all of a sudden you go somewhere different. There's like a different like. Call me crazy, but I feel like there's a different energy or something, and it frees you up, and all of a sudden your music flows better.
100%, man. 110%.
What's that about, man?
I feel like it's just being in like you said, and it all goes back to Paul Nance's and his ether sentiment. Like you're in a new spot, you're in a new energy, and maybe it's a place you haven't been before. Maybe it's a place you've been 100 times before. You just never had your guitar with you. You know, new room, big room.
So I teach guitar too. So I'll go to. Sometimes I'll be in a student's house, like I wasn't able to play all this cool shit, and I was like stuck earlier in the day. Like,
right.
It's something to do with this place.
Exactly. New energy, and like when I'm in my house, I do all my writing on the third floor in my office, and I feel like over time, maybe you're burning that energy up. Maybe that ether that Paul talks about in that specific space, that energy, maybe it's been sucked out for right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I grabbed my guitar and now I'm in some South Florida hotel room that looks like something out of Scarface, like somebody was definitely chainsawed in that bathroom. And I'm there for work. But whatever. I come up with like a killer idea for a song.
That's awesome that you travel too. I mean,
yeah.
That's gotta be so cool.
And it's, it sucks being away from my family. But at the same time, like, that's the part where like, I'm so thankful for what I do. And I'm thankful for my partner, Dan, who I'm sure will listen to this as well. Dan came up with our company idea and like, he brought me on board. It was like, it was him and I, and it was us against the world. And it's been great, but it affords me the ability to keep my guitar with me, travel where I gotta go. Sometimes I bring it, sometimes I don't, because the airlines are terrible with.
Is that why your case is the way it is?
Yeah, 100%, man. That is a TSA gator locked flight case.
Awesome.
So the only people that can open that when it's locked is a TSA agent, and even then, like, they will take your strings off and pull your electronics out.
What?
Oh yeah, like they'll if you have an acoustic electric, there's a good chance there's a 9-volt battery inside there.
Yeah.
And with mine, because of another incident where my guitar case got left out on the tarmac and got hit by one of those things that bring your luggage in, it broke that guitar. So now you can't just take the electronics, the Fishman electronics, out of it and pull the battery out. You have to go in through the sound hole.
Okay.
So that's the way it is. So in order to get that battery out, that's what you got to do. They don't like when things are plugged in. So they will take your strings off. They'll go in there and check to see if there's a battery. If I had forgotten to take the battery out, they take that battery, they wrap it up in TSA tape, and drop it in the sound hole. And that's how they roll.
Couldn't you just like, okay, because I have a battery in mind, so like I might be going to Manchester like in 2020, just to like maybe gig around and play, but so couldn't you just like maybe just take and dangle your battery out before they check?
You could.
I mean, like
you definitely could do that, or I learned that you can have it as a carry-on, as long as you don't have like a carry-on, and if you're flying overseas, they do have closets. So you can take that and put it in, or if you get there, you can gate check it. So you have that guitar, you give it to the guy, it's already gone through TSA security, they x-rayed it, they check to make sure it wasn't a bomb, carry that baby with you, and you gate check it, and they give it to you right after you get off the plane, and you're good to go. That's the other way that I do it, but when I can't, I leave it in God's hands, and it's got my flight case with the TSA lock, and it's lived through many flights.
Yeah, I can only imagine, because I know I have an idea of how much you travel now, and it's like I'm probably asking you more about it after this. Yeah, but speaking of God, it's like the moments where you're stepping into different rooms, it always makes me kind of like it's such a weird phenomenon almost that I'm just like I start to question like spirituality even and like it's like wait how could this is almost undeniable now because it's like why does this happen,
right?
You know.
But then again, it's like what is it about this energy over the energy to say my living room at home?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is it just
is it something that triggers like just excitability in your brain because it's something new but also like inviting, like you
right.
know what I mean?
Right.
Because there can be new and frightening too, you know.
Sure, but you know, it doesn't all just come back to science, and
right.
like you know, your brain reacts to this stimuli different than like this stimuli because this stimuli is so ingrained in you. This is your everyday. This is your routine. It's not new.
Predictable, yeah.
Yeah, those dopamine receptors or the whatever receptors that you know make you feel joy or make you feel that like rush hearing the different acoustics in somebody else's house.
All of it, you know, it's probably all this, all those little things that add up to either like a negative outcome or a positive outcome for you. Like it all of a sudden affects the way you strum. Like okay, so this is so I've been in a predictable environment, so I'm going to predict strum in a predictable way, you know.
Right, and you're in a hotel room somewhere else, and it's coming out totally different.
Yeah,
and that's.
Or there's drugs in the air, you know.
Yeah, or there's lots of drugs. I don't know what's happening. I feel funny.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that is my process.
Okay.
As it were.
Oh well, you know, thanks so much for coming.
You got it.
I mean,
thanks for having me.
I'm glad you kind of like stamped it down there because I really need to pee.
You got it.
But this was great, Josh. I will see you next time.
You got it.
On The Process.